The flickering candle danced in the silence of the room, its soft light casting a long shadow over the untouched slice of red velvet cake. Monica Williams sat at the small kitchen table, her elbows on the worn wood, chin resting in her hands. The digital clock on the microwave glowed 8:42 p.m. Still nothing. No messages. No calls. She picked up her phone again, refreshing the screen even though she knew there was no point. Nothing from Calvin. Nothing from her sister, her old friends. Not even a social media notification. A dry laugh slipped from her lips. Bitter, hollow. Happy birthday to me, she thought. She stared at the cake she had bought herself from the corner bakery after work. The lady behind the counter had asked if she wanted it gift-wrapped. Monica had smiled and said no. What would be the point? She sniffled, wiping the corner of her eye. She hadn't expected a party. Calvin wasn't the type, but a call, a note, a simple happy birthday, babe. The apartment was too quiet, too still. She glanced toward the bedroom where his gym bag was still sitting from his supposed work trip that had gotten extended. He hadn't even bothered to lie creatively anymore. Monica reached forward to blow out the candle but stopped. A tear rolled down her cheek as she whispered, "Make a wish," to herself. Her voice cracked. Then, a knock at the door. She jolted, heart jumping. Who would come by this late? She stood slowly, brushing crumbs from her dress, walking toward the door with hesitant steps. Through the peephole, she saw a man, late 30s, maybe early 40s, clean cut, dark blazer, holding something, an envelope. She cracked the door open. "Yes?" The man gave a gentle nod. His voice was calm but firm. "Mrs. Monica Williams?" She narrowed her eyes. "Who's asking? I'm sorry to bother you this late. My name's Derek. I was asked to give this to you in person." He held out the envelope. It was plain. No marking. "I don't understand. I think you should sit down," he said gently. "You're going to want to see what's inside." Monica hesitated, pulse rising. She glanced at the envelope, then at Derek. Something about his expression, calm, serious, but not threatening, made her open the door wider. The candle was still burning behind her. The room still quiet, but everything in that moment had begun to change. Monica sat across from Derek in the small living room, the envelope resting unopened between them on the coffee table. Her fingers hovered over it, then pulled back, as if afraid of whatever truth it might spill out onto the floor. "I don't understand," she finally said, her voice cautious but steady. "Real estate transactions." "My name?" Derek leaned forward slightly, his tone respectful. "I work with a private investigations firm. We were hired to track down a financial leak within a mid-level logistics company. It started as a routine corporate embezzlement case, but it widened fast. Some of the shell companies used to launder the money were connected to real estate flips. When we traced the paperwork, your name came up, as a spouse, on 4 property deeds, all in the past 2 years. Monica blinked, stunned. "I've never signed any deed. We don't even own this apartment. We rent." "I believe you," he said gently. "But your husband, Calvin Williams, he's listed as the primary buyer. You're listed as co-owner. He used your name, your information." She leaned back, her breath catching. Her heart thudded in her ears. She suddenly felt ice cold. "I didn't sign anything. I would have known." Derek nodded. "That's exactly why I'm here." 12 years ago, Monica had been the first of her friends to get married. Calvin had swept her off her feet with his charm, ambition, and polished smiles. Everyone said they were the dream couple, stable, mature, enviable. She believed them. For a long time, she believed it too. She was dependable, always the planner, always the fixer, a quiet kind of strength. She built her life around Calvin, supported his career changes, took evening classes while working full-time so they could afford a better place. She downplayed her needs, her opinions, even her career, because Calvin needed to focus, and she was so good at handling things. Eventually, her life became one long list of things to handle. Even now, as an assistant principal at a local high school, she found herself being the steady one, the one others came to when things fell apart. She carried burdens that weren't hers because it was easier than watching others break. But inside, she was tired. Years of quiet disappointment had hardened her joy into something brittle, the thing that made it worse, the silence. Calvin never raised his voice. He didn't cheat, or so she thought. He didn't drink or hit or scream. He just disappeared, first, emotionally, then physically. He came home late, started locking his phone, spent weekends on team-building retreats. Every time she tried to talk about IVF or adoption, he brushed it aside. Not the right time, he'd say. Let's just enjoy what we have. But what did they have? Monica often couldn't tell anymore. She had pulled away from her family. Not intentionally, but over time it became easier to keep up the image than to admit the cracks. Her mother once said, "I knew Calvin was a good one the moment I met him," and Monica didn't have the heart to say otherwise. Her younger sister, married with 2 kids, asked about her childless life in clipped, judgmental tones. And Monica, always so good at keeping things in control, chose isolation over confrontation. Her only pocket of light was her volunteer work, tutoring teenagers from underfunded schools every Saturday. There, she didn't have to be Mrs. Williams. She could just be Monica, patient, present, needed. Now, sitting in front of a stranger who knew more about her husband's financial affairs than she did, Monica felt something cracking inside. She finally picked up the envelope. It was thicker than she expected. Inside were photocopies of documents, mortgage agreements, property records, her name, her forged signature. She covered her mouth. Who would do this? She whispered. But even as she asked, the answer felt like a heavy stone settling in her stomach. Calvin. Derek's voice was careful. The deeper we looked, the more we found. I didn't know if you were a victim or complicit, but I needed to find out. Monica's laugh was sharp, humorless. Complicit? I haven't even been included in my own marriage for years. She stood and walked toward the kitchen, needing space, air, something to grab onto. She stared at the birthday candle, now a puddle of wax. So many years of building a life around a man who'd quietly erased her from it. She turned back toward Derek, her eyes clearer now, a little sharper. What do you need from me? He met her gaze. Honestly, I need your help. If you're willing, you might be the key to blowing the whole thing open. She nodded slowly. Her hands were shaking, but something deeper was rising in her chest. Something she hadn't felt in years. Control. Monica sat alone at the kitchen table long after Derek had left. The pile of documents fanned out in front of her like a courtroom exhibit. Each line of legal jargon felt like a punch to the gut. Her name, her full name, appeared on deeds, loan applications, business registrations, some dated as far back as 18 months ago. She hadn't signed a single one, but the signatures matched hers. Someone had forged them so convincingly, it made her doubt her own memory. No, she told herself. She would remember signing real estate contracts. She would remember investing in companies like Clarion Holdings or Eastbridge Assets, names she'd never even heard Calvin mention. When she heard the keys in the door just past midnight, she sat straighter, arms folded across her chest, the documents stacked neatly at her elbow, like a silent accusation. Calvin walked in, phone in hand, already talking. "Yeah, I'll call you back in 5, man." He stopped mid-sentence when he saw her. "You're up?" She held up the top page without speaking. He looked at it, then at her. His expression didn't change. "What is this?" "You tell me," Monica said quietly. "My name is on this, along with 3 other deeds and 2 loan documents. I never signed any of them, Cal." He laughed, a short, incredulous sound, and tossed his keys on the counter. "Come on, Monica. We talked about these months ago. Don't you remember?" "No, we didn't, and you know it." He exhaled heavily, walking to the fridge like they were having a normal conversation. "You're always so emotional. You probably just forgot. This is why I don't like throwing everything at you. It overwhelms you." "Don't do that," she snapped. "Don't gaslight me. I didn't sign anything, and I want to know why you use my name." He turned around then, slowly. A coldness had entered his eyes that she hadn't seen before, or had been too blind to admit. "Watch your tone. You're not going to start a fight over paperwork." "This isn't paperwork, Calvin. It's fraud." For a moment, he just stared at her. Then he walked over and snatched the documents off the table. "You signed them," he said. "You just forgot. And if you didn't sign them, then maybe you shouldn't have left those blank forms lying around. Think real hard before you start throwing around words like fraud." Her blood turned to ice. He dropped the papers in the trash, kissed her on the temple like nothing had happened, and went to bed. Monica didn't sleep. By morning, she had a migraine pounding behind her eyes and a nausea that wouldn't go away. She pulled out her laptop, logged into her bank accounts, and froze. Every account, every single one, checking, savings, her teacher pension rollover fund, had been drained. 0 balances. Even her private savings, the one her mother left her when she passed, gone. She stared at the screen in silence for several long minutes. Then she picked up her phone and called the only person she could trust. "Tonya?" she said when the line picked up. Her voice cracked. "I need your help." Tonya Bryce had once been her favorite co-worker back at Jefferson High. A sharp, no-nonsense woman with a paralegal certification and the instincts of a seasoned detective. They'd grown close, but drifted after Tonya transferred schools. Years ago, Tonya had pulled Monica aside after a staff event and said, "I don't trust your husband. I've seen his type. Be careful." Monica hadn't listened. Now she was praying Tonya still cared enough to pick up. "Talk to me," Tonya said. Monica explained everything. The documents, the stranger, Calvin's denial, the emptied accounts. "Do you have PDFs of the deeds?" Tonya asked. "Send them to me now. I'll run them against the property database and see what comes up." Within hours, Tonya confirmed the worst. "Girl," she said over speakerphone, "he used your social, your signature, everything. You're listed as co-borrower on at least 2 loans that are already flagged as delinquent. If this explodes, they're coming after you too." Monica's voice was a whisper. "But I didn't sign anything." "I know, but unless you prove that, fast, you're on the hook." Monica sat on the floor of her bedroom, knees pulled to her chest. The walls of her life, her marriage, her financial future, her identity were closing in. Her birthday, once a quiet day of lonely disappointment, had become the day her entire life tilted sideways. But somewhere beneath the fear, a spark was beginning to light. She would not go down quietly. The first night after Tonya's call, Monica couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling while Calvin snored beside her, as if nothing in their life had cracked wide open. She got up before dawn, sat at the dining table with her laptop, and opened a blank spreadsheet. She began listing everything: dates, bank transactions, property addresses, company names from the documents Derek had shown her. She pulled their phone bills, cross-referenced emails, scoured through tax returns. Derek came by later that morning with more information. His face was tight with something close to pity. "You're going to want to sit down again," he said. "I'm done sitting," Monica replied. He handed her a manila folder. Inside were surveillance photos. One showed Calvin in front of a townhome in Charlotte, with a woman and a young child. Another photo showed him holding hands with the woman outside a wine bar. The timestamp was 2 weeks ago. Derek cleared his throat. "Her name's Justine Collier. She thinks he's single. Engaged, in fact. Been living with him part-time for over 3 years." Monica stared at the image like it was from another planet. He proposed to someone else. Twice. Once last year. She posted it on Facebook. It's private now, but I have screenshots. She couldn't breathe. Her fingers shook as she held the photos. Derek leaned forward, voice gentler now. "You're not crazy, Monica. You're not broken. You just trusted the wrong man for too long. That doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." The tears came again, hot, silent, relentless. But when Calvin came home that night, she didn't cry. She waited until he was seated, scrolling his phone, then tossed the photos on the coffee table. He barely looked up. "So? 3 years, Calvin? An entire child's lifetime?" He smirked. "I told you. You don't remember anything right. You don't listen. You're engaged to someone else." He finally looked up, and what Monica saw wasn't shame. It was boredom. "You think you can make this a problem for me?" he said, slowly standing. "You don't even know who I am. You don't have the guts to take me down." She held his gaze. "I don't need guts. I have receipts." For the first time, something flickered behind his eyes. He stormed out. Monica stood in the middle of their living room, the house she'd once saved for, decorated, loved. It all felt like a museum of lies. She went into his office and found the second phone. He never locked it. Too confident, too careless. She downloaded everything: photos, texts, emails. She synced it to a burner phone Tonya helped her buy under a fake name. Every night, while Calvin pretended to work late or stayed in Charlotte, Monica worked. She met Derek in cafes, parking lots, libraries. He taught her how to organize digital files for legal review. Tonya walked her through steps to protect herself: freezing credit, closing joint accounts, filing preliminary affidavits. They were building a case, slowly, carefully, secretly. And just when she thought she was getting ahead of it, she got the call. Tonya's voice was urgent. "Monica, the feds are looking into Clarion Holdings, one of the companies Calvin registered under your name. It's tied to a shell corporation in Delaware and flagged for laundering. What does that mean for me?" It means you could be on the hook if they think you were involved. Monica, they might come knocking, and they won't care about your tears. They'll care about what you signed. Monica felt the room tilt. I didn't sign anything. You need to prove that. And fast. She hung up and stood in the middle of the kitchen. Her hands shook as she gripped the counter. This was more than betrayal. This was survival. Her mind flashed back to her childhood. Her mother's voice, soft but firm. Don't talk about your father in public. Don't embarrass the family. Every time her father had raged or disappeared for days, her mother smoothed it over. Keep it quiet. Don't show people our cracks. That conditioning had taught Monica how to survive in silence, to endure instead of confront. But this time, the silence would destroy her. She wasn't just fighting for money or even for justice. She was fighting for her right to tell the truth, to exist without shame. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where she cried on her birthday, and opened her laptop. She created a folder titled Monica, Proof of Life. In it, she began archiving everything. Emails with metadata, text messages, bank records, screenshots of Calvin's fake accounts, a timeline of their last 6 years together, every lie he'd told, every document he'd forged. She printed it all out, bought a fireproof lockbox, stored one copy at Tonya's office. She was done being quiet, and though she hadn't said it aloud yet, Monica knew this wasn't about saving her marriage. This was about saving herself. Monica stood outside the sleek glass doors of the law firm, the wind tugging at her coat like it wanted her to run. But she didn't flinch. She'd made the call. She'd gathered the files. She'd walked herself through every step. No more waiting for someone to rescue her. Inside, her newly hired white-collar crimes attorney, Marla Trenholm, extended a firm hand. Mrs. Williams, you've done more groundwork than most of my clients ever manage. We're going to make sure the law sees that. Monica nodded. I'm not here to be a victim. I'm here to make sure he doesn't do this to anyone else. With Derek's support and the files she'd spent weeks collecting, they submitted everything to the State Financial Crimes Division, complete with a statement of full cooperation. Monica's name, once buried in fraudulent property title, now appeared at the top of a whistleblower report. Days passed, then a week, and then it happened. Calvin Williams was arrested in broad daylight in the parking lot of a real estate office in Raleigh, wearing one of his tailored suits and that smug smirk he always wore when he thought the world would bend to him. Only this time the handcuffs clicked. News cameras caught it. The woman who ran out after him, Janine Harper, 5 months pregnant, in heels, in tears, screaming, "What is going on?" Monica watched the footage from her apartment, hands shaking, not out of fear, but from the surreal weight of finally being believed. Later that week, Janine called. She'd found Monica's number through one of Calvin's old emails, one of many she was now combing through with horror. They met at a quiet cafe near the courthouse. Janine walked in with red-rimmed eyes and a trembling lower lip. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I believe you," Monica said, and she meant it. Janine clutched her cup like it was the only solid thing in the room. "He said he was a widower, that you died of ovarian cancer. I swear to God, I cried for you." Monica reached into her bag and pulled out a folder. "This is who he is. Mortgage fraud, identity theft, at least 3 fake companies. You need to protect yourself and your baby." Janine opened the folder. Her face crumpled. "He said he wanted to name our son after his father. He doesn't even have a father, does he? Number. And the one he pretended to be isn't real either." Janine nodded slowly, lips pressed tight. "I'll testify," she said, eyes suddenly hard. "And when that baby is old enough, I'll tell him exactly who his father was and who he wasn't." Monica felt the first real exhale of relief in weeks. Not because Calvin was out of her life, but because someone else had found the courage to say it out loud with her. By the end of the month, local news outlets picked up the story. Wake County administrator uncovers husband's real estate scam, assists in FBI sting. Double life, double fraud. Woman exposes husband's 2 families and multi-million-dollar scheme. Her name was no longer just buried in paperwork. It was in headlines. It was attached to something brave, something real. Teachers from her district began quietly reaching out. Former students. Even her estranged cousins sent a message. "I saw what you did. Proud of you, Mon. Really proud." She wasn't hiding anymore. In fact, she started speaking publicly, in small women's groups at first, about financial abuse, manipulation. and how the worst betrayal is sometimes the one you're trained to ignore. She looked at her life. Broken, yes, but no longer buried in someone else's lies. And on her next birthday, she bought her own cake. One candle, one name on it. Heron. The courtroom was quiet when the verdict was read. Calvin Eugene Williams, guilty on all counts. Sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. Monica sat still, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She didn't cry. She didn't flinch. She just exhaled, slow and deep, like she'd been holding her breath for 12 years, and finally remembered how to breathe. The civil case closed shortly after. Monica was cleared of all liability. The judge acknowledged that her identity had been used without consent, and the forged signatures were indisputable. The court awarded her partial damages from the seized assets, enough to start over, enough to feel like the years hadn't been completely stolen. But Monica didn't want to just start over. She wanted to build something that mattered. With Tonya's legal knowledge and Derek's research support, she registered her nonprofit within 6 months. Unlocked, financial literacy and recovery for women. The mission was simple, but urgent. Help women trapped in toxic relationships understand finances, fraud, credit, and legal protections. It started in a single room at a local community center with 3 folding chairs and 1 whiteboard. Within a year, she was speaking at women's shelters, church groups, and schools. Her story wasn't just a warning, it was a blueprint for survival. Shame thrives in silence, she would tell the women. I stayed quiet for too long. Now I talk so no one else has to walk through what I did without a light. Tonya stayed by her side, her anchor and her sister in everything but blood. They laughed more these days. Sometimes they even danced in Monica's apartment when the tension of the week melted off. And then there was Derek. He never pushed, never expected anything. He just showed up, clipboard in hand, smile soft, voice steady. One Friday evening, after a long day of organizing a training workshop, they sat across from each other in a quiet corner of a cafe, the kind of space where the hum of espresso machines and soft jazz made everything feel possible. You really did it, Derek said, watching her over the rim of his mug. I didn't think I could, Monica admitted. I thought surviving was the best I could hope for. It was, he said, but you didn't just survive. You created something. You turned every scar into a door for someone else. She looked down, feeling warmth rise to her face, not from embarrassment, but from something tender and whole. I'm still figuring out who I am without him. That's the best part, Derek said quietly. You don't have to rush. You get to choose who that is. She didn't reply. She just nodded, grateful, grounded. For once, the future didn't terrify her. It felt open. On her next birthday, Monica lit her own candles again, this time surrounded by women from her support group, Tonya beaming beside her, and Derek in the back, holding a plate of cupcakes. They sang off key. They laughed too loud, and Monica's smile didn't fade once. She wore a blue dress she never would have bought before. Bold, confident, beautiful. She closed her eyes before blowing out the candles, but she didn't make a wish. She didn't need to. She was already living it. The sky blushed soft pink and gold as the first rays of sun stretched across the horizon. Waves rolled in gently, a rhythmic hush against the shore. Monica walked slowly along the damp sand, barefoot, a light breeze tugging at the hem of her sweater. In her hand, she held a letter, slightly worn from being read more than once. It had arrived the day before, postmarked from Atlanta. The handwriting was familiar now. Dear Monica, I don't know how to thank you. You could have destroyed me, and instead, you gave me the truth. I named her Monica Janine Harper. She came early, but she's strong. Like you. You saved more than just yourself. You saved us too. Thank you. Janine Monica stopped walking. Her toes sank into the sand as she looked at the photo tucked inside. A tiny baby wrapped in a lilac blanket, eyes closed, fist curled just beneath her cheek. Peaceful, safe. She felt the tears come before she could stop them. But they weren't sharp or aching like before. These tears were warm, quiet, grateful. A year ago, she'd sat alone at a table, forgotten on her birthday. Now, the silence felt different. It wasn't empty. It was full, with closure, with clarity. She folded the letter gently and placed it back in her coat pocket. Then she lifted her face to the ocean, to the rising sun. to the wide-open world. "Happy birthday to me," she whispered. A small smile broke across her lips, not because everything was perfect, but because she had made it through. No longer waiting for someone else to remember her, no longer trapped in someone else's version of her life. She took a deep breath, the salt air filling her lungs, clean and endless. For the first time in years, Monica Williams stood in her own light, whole, wiser, and finally, free. Hi besties, thank you so much for watching to the end. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe.